Hey family, so excited to roll out this teaching to you, especially to you, DNA group point people. The purpose behind this document and the reason why I'm walking you through it over a video is to hopefully help you kind of get a good grasp of where we're going, a heart behind it, so that you can guide your group through it. Again, remember, as a point person, you're not the leader, you're not the grand teacher, but you are guiding, you're facilitating. And so the document has been designed so that you can that it's self-explanatory, but there are a number of places where you could be confused, and thought it'd be more helpful to kind of walk through it hand by hand so that you can understand it. Also, wanted to make this video instead of you having to have a special time for training and adding to your already packed schedule. So hopefully this is helpful for you. I'm going to try to make it as short and concise as possible. So the title of this document is God-Centered Life Planning. And, we're just trying to take seriously Scripture's call to redeem the time, for the days are evil, to be careful with the way you walk, know the way you are walking, and let the word of the Lord be a lamp unto your feet. And so for many of us, including me, we can kind of just go through normal rhythms in life and not know why we are. We're just going with the flow of things, and we start adding things to our schedule, and we start doing things in our life, and we don't even know why. We may have put some thought, maybe even some prayer, but we're really not fully aware if we're hitting the long-term goals of what we want ultimately, what we want to be eternally for the Lord. And so this document is designed not to perfectly, but greatly help you identify what are your values, your true values. What I mean by that is, what are the things that you ultimately want for you to value, and what are the things that you actually value? What do you aspire to value on one hand, and then the other hand, what are you showing to value? So, for instance, a man will say, I value my family, but then you look at his schedule and his time, there's almost no representation of that value in his actual schedule. And so what we want to do is we want to find ways to sync and harmonize what we aspire to versus what we say, versus what we actually value. We also want to look at what's our life vision, what's our life purpose, what are the different skills that we want to grow in, what are the different people, who are the different people we want to focus on. So I'll go through all of that, but that's just kind of a quick overview. So want to highlight this line here. You will go through multiple revisions through this throughout your life. You're in different seasons. This is made to adapt and to be returned to. Okay, the beauty is that it will deeply help long term your ability to prioritize what truly matters. And we all want to live a life worth living. We all want to face God one day and say, man, I lived my life not perfectly, but man, I'm happy, the way I went. I don't want to live my life with regret and die and say, Lord, I wish I cared about these things more. I wish I didn't care about these things as much as I did. I wish I did this more. I wish I did this less more. We want our lives to go to the right place. But I think a lot of us aimlessly kind of just go and we do good things here and there. We're not living in the zone. We're not living in the ideal kind of flourishing zone, and our trajectory is not going to hit our ultimate goals that we say. So that's a lot. So we want to start off by talking about what is our ultimate purpose. Before you can talk about your values, you want to start with your purpose. So what is the purpose of man? Okay, and this is like the most ideal statements, not like what do you think your purpose is, but this is very general, and this is very like more theological. Like, what is our purpose? What's the mission of the church? And these questions are also great opportunities for us to talk about in our DNA groups and to think about, okay, do I even understand these things biblically? And so in light of the answers above, craft a purpose statement for your own life. So this is a specific one. So what this shouldn't be is a broad one like, hey, I just want to glorify God. It's too broad, too broad. But it needs to be broad enough to matter no matter what stage or physical condition you're in or job. So it shouldn't be so specific where, like, if you all of a sudden are married, it changes drastically. Or if all of a sudden you lose that job, or for me, if I'm not a pastor anymore, that my purpose is not completely destroyed. So, but it has to be more specific. My ultimate purpose is And number two, the way I will accomplish this. Okay. And so everyone can work on the different statement. You want to be concise enough, but not, you don't want a whole treatise and whole paper, but something that kind of encapsulates what do you want your life to be about? Why do you exist? Then, in light of that, what are your values? What do you aspire to be true of what you value? Like for me, I want to aspire to value I want to value people who are not like me. But actual value is that I want to be around people who are like me, And so there is a disconnect. So we want to identify what are our aspirational values that we long to be true of ourselves, but what are the actual values? And then we want to figure out a way to align them if there's a misalignment. Okay? There's more text here you can read. I'm going to fly through it. It talks about it more. So here's an example. If you say that you value your relationship with Jesus, does it reflect in your schedule, right? So if you say that Jesus is your everything, but yet you don't have no time for him, you are showing that that's not the case. And this section will talk about how do you identify your actual values. And so after assessing your life with your loved ones, and you want to include community, and if you're married, your spouse, what would be your top 5 actual values? And so very easy, and probably not true for most of us, but it could be like your actual value is money. You live your life so you can get as much money as possible. Okay, that's just a very easy example. And then you want to identify what are the values that you want to be true of yourself. So one way to put it is, I'd be devastated if these areas of my life were not exceptional by the time I die. So like there's a lot of things that we get excited about, like man, I really wish I was a better cook. Like cooking would be great, right? And maybe that's something you really want to aspire to, and that's like something that's really important, but maybe it's not. But what we have is we have a lot of competing values in our life. And the reality is, for something to be a value, it has to be a priority. If you value everything, you end up valuing nothing. And so it's important to decide and prioritize what are you going to care about. So for me, I value my physical health and my physique. However, it's not going to be a top value for me. And I have decided that to have the ideal body that I would love to have is just not going to happen if I want to uphold my other values, like my family, this all people's church, my time with Jesus. I just know the amount of work it takes to have that kind of physique for my body type, that I just can't do that if I want to truly value the other things. And so trying to identify what are you going to prioritize as your values. And so that's why this question is pretty revealing. Here's another question. I'd be okay if these areas of my life were not exceptional by the time I die. You know what? When I face God, I'm not going to be saying, you know what, God, can I get a second chance? I want to live my life over so I can have the best six-pack abs. I'm not going to care about that, right? And so what are the things in your life that you care about too much, but really, when you die, you're not going to care about it. You really don't want that to be important to you, but it is important to you right now. Like here's another example. Sometimes I get really excited about, man, I really wish I was good at certain sports, like basketball. I wish basketball was a thing that I put a lot of time into and I trained. But you know what? I don't have time for that. I can't value that. And at the end of the day, when I die, I'm not going to say, Lord, I wish I just had more time to play basketball. Another way to see your aspiration values, I would want my loved ones to say this about me at my funeral. What would you want your spouse, if you have one or you want one, to say about you at your funeral? What would you want your children to say? What would you want your church? What would you want unbelievers? These are really great exercises to really highlight what are the things that truly matter to you. So after completing the exercises above, narrow down your top 5 aspirational values, the values which you want to be true of you. There may or may not overlap with their actual values. And this is where it's the hard work of saying, okay, what are the things that I really want to be true of myself, regardless if they're true of myself right now. And then we're going to talk about how do we align them. What are the values of your life that are biblical or unbiblical? Is your schedule currently set up to align with your aspiration values? You can go on. And then we want to come up with an alignment action plan. How can you sync what you truly want to be true of yourself, or sincerely want to be true of yourself, versus what is actually true of yourself? What are the things that are getting in the way of your values? Things that may be neutrally good, but they're getting in the way. Are there any significant shifts you may have to take in your life to make these happen? What would you have to do? When will you do this? Who can help me with this? And with that in mind, what kind of skills and competencies would you may you have to grow in? Every value probably has subcategories. So I wouldn't say a value you should have one of your top aspirational values is knowing the Bible really well. I think that should be a subcategory of intimacy with the Lord. And so if I'm serious about my intimacy with the Lord, I want to know how to read my Bible. I want to know how to study. If one of my values is to do my job with excellence, what are some skills of your job that you may need to work on? And so it also talks about what are knowledge subjects that you want to grow in. So we separate with skills and competencies and knowledge. There's probably a lot of overlap. Don't feel like you have to fill all of it out. Who are all the people I will prioritize? The reality is we all live within a community, and these people can be benefits to the values that God has called us to, or also they can hinder. And what I mean by that is if you value a certain skill that you want to grow and you believe God wants you to grow and this will be good for the kingdom, and yet you are constantly living by the tyranny of urgent and always spending time with people, you never have time to develop your craft, you are therefore shooting yourself in the foot. And so the reality is all of us need a handful of people in our life that we go deep with, like DNA group and so forth, but you can't do it with everyone. So who are the people in your life that you're going to prioritize right now, which means you're going to have to say no. Anytime you have to say yes to somebody, you have to necessarily say no to others. This is going to be one of the hardest sections of this worksheet. And then you will ultimately want to meet with your DNA group and meet with other friends and mentors, talk with your spouse, and looking over some of these things, editing, fine-tuning them, praying, and dreaming. So hopefully this helped. This was a little longer than I hoped, but hopefully it will help you kind of think through this whole document. And I'm just so excited if every single member really embraced this, what kind of flourishing lives that we're going to see after the hard work and the learning curve of making it happen. But I can just imagine us just flourishing so much in just a short season as we start working and pressing into these healthy rhythms, as we kind of have a target of where we're heading. And if we kind of know where we're heading, we're going to be able to live our life in light of that ending, rather than just kind of going day by day, being tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine or every excitement or every opportunity, but laser focused with eternal values and eternity, and ultimately seeing Jesus face to face and hearing those precious words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That's what we want to be heading towards.